Hello everyone, Shadefyre here, and welcome back to Let's Play Parasite Eve. This is episode 2, probably a little sooner than you expected it, but we're still here, Carnegie Hall, and we have to jump down into the hole that Eve/Melissa fled into. So we had our first boss fight here, and our second fight against Eve, but now we get into a little more of a normal dungeon kind of area, because of course, you can't have a game set in New York without ending up in a sewer, even if it is this comically large, unrealistic sewer. But we are very determined to apprehend this floating Final Fantasy monster. Unsurprisingly, there are still rats, because we are in a sewer. However, there are some slightly stranger things we'll run into here in the sewer. I'm sure you can guess at least one of them, but the other may come as a surprise. Also, this is just an example here of how the perspective in these battles can change quite a bit. Sometimes the camera will be very pulled out, and the range on your guns will be a lot more important. Sometimes there'll be weird camera angles like this. Alright, so we got a new Parasite power, Scan, which does pretty much what you'd expect. Very similar to Final Fantasy. You know, I remember Final Fantasy VIII having a very cool scan spell, like it had a whole screen and everything instead of just popping up data. So here's one of the stranger things. I guess there are apparently frogs in this sewer, because now we've got giant mutant frogs. You know, I actually didn't notice or remember these guys having a bunch of eyes right above their mouth like that, so I think that's actually something that's easier to see with this modified emulator. I'm actually kind of curious how certain games will look running on this. Frogs are a little tougher, though they are not too difficult to avoid since they rotate towards you right before they attack. If I remember correctly, the max level in this game is actually only 30, so we'll level up fairly quickly early on, but then it'll kind of slow down. Alright, got ourselves a 1911. Which you can see here has higher attack power and larger range than our current gun, as well as 3 shots instead of 2, but as I mentioned, the higher the rate of fire on a gun, the less damage each shot actually does. It kind of divides up the damage. So 3 shots is not necessarily better than 2. Especially because you have to stand in place longer to fire 3 shots. I wonder where this, like, idea of these huge sewers with, like, catwalks and shit actually comes from. Like, is there any kind of basis for that? Also, here's an example of there is a battle that can occur in this screen, but we didn't trigger it because we've already been in a few battles, and you can't just run back and forth like this to trigger it. You have to basically exit the screen and come back. So again, random battles are not really nearly as annoying in this as they can be in some Final Fantasy games. Which is good for an LP, because it means we're not just spending half of an episode fighting the same enemies. I think this game has a pretty good variety of enemies, and you never really get stuck fighting the same ones for too long. Hey, you're that little girl we saw earlier, and maybe also the one in my flashbacks. I'm not sure. Wait, little girl, don't go. Don't open that door. And going up top really only shows you that there are 2 chests back here, but you can kind of see them. Like this one you can see just barely behind the stairs. Which is a +1 offense for our current gun. And some more bullets. Nice of someone to just put a box with a couple bullets in it in the sewer. With these weird, twisty valves. What do these do? No idea. And some very elaborate lights, actually, now that I'm looking around. Look at those lights. Why are they so fancy, and why are they in this sewer? Oh, actually, there's another box right there. You can also usually tell what screens will have a fight on them. I mean, sometimes it'll surprise you, but whenever you've got those kind of big screens like this one coming up here, you can tell that some shit's gonna go down. And like an area like this, the range on our gun matters because, you know, it's actually a big enough screen to have things be out of range. Alright, these guys will be a little tough with their tongues, because they have pretty long range with them. The nice thing is that when you shoot a single target, you can stun lock them. But if they're like in the middle of an attack or something, as soon as you stop firing, they will do their attack. Okay, I'm gonna use a PE power here. Generally, if you're in a fight like this with an enemy that's easy to avoid, you can just kind of hang out, let your PE recharge, and then heal yourself instead of wasting a healing item. Let's use scan here, just to show off what it looks like. Yeah, you can see it just shows how much health they have at the bottom and their weaknesses. Sensitive to cold. Well, we don't have anything that does cold damage. There's a little bit of elemental damage in this game, but very little. So it's not really something you can easily switch in and out. Alright, let's make another save here. And like, if I wanted, I could just go back and grind a couple levels out in the area before, but we don't really need to. Again, there's very few battles in this game where you'll feel like, oh shit, I'm just under-leveled for this. But leveling definitely can help you when you're having trouble with a fight. Because, you know, you get all of your stats up when you level up. Oh, there she is. How long has she just been floating there waiting for us to catch up? Also, let's just use this item to free up some space, because our inventory is kind of full right now. And reload my gun. At least she actually did freeze and wait for us to walk over here. Now we're getting hot again. I mean, to be fair, I already took her on twice. Even if you did have more people with you, they'd just burn, right? Except that one guy that everyone else will forget about. I'm just gonna pretend that he died as soon as she shoved him off screen. Maybe his close proximity to Aya is what kept him alive. You'll find out eventually, in about 10 to 12 hours. Your mitochondria will... But until then, I'm just going to fuck off through these pipes. Something about the way she just kind of flails her arms around whenever she's flying is really odd to me. And of course, we can't have something that happens in the New York sewers without an alligator, or in this case, a mutated alligator boss. I love this boss though. He's just so weird and goofy. And the boss music is great. Alright, so this is the only time they give you a tutorial for this, but he has two different sections you can target. You can attack the head or the tail, and we're gonna go for the tail first. This boss can actually give you a little trouble though with those targets, because you have to get very close to him to be able to hit the tail with the range on our current gun. Like, I gotta be standing right up in his grill. And he also does a fair bit of damage, so you can't really stay too close. You can see there we missed because it's too far away. When he rotates. Alright, we did sufficient damage to trigger his second stage. It's not a very difficult boss. But this is also a thing that happens. Sometimes when you're fighting a boss, the arena itself will change positions. And it makes it easier to avoid his new attack. I even like the way he just kind of awkwardly waddles around like this before he attacks. Like, just gotta wait for my meter to fill up. And that's it. Fairly easy boss. I mean, he does a lot of damage if you actually get hit, but his attacks are all fairly easy to avoid. And we got the power slow, which does pretty much the same thing as it does in Final Fantasy. I guess this alligator must have eaten a SWAT officer or something, because it was carrying a Kevlar vest. Just tell me what you want, Eve. No more riddles. Anyhow, somehow she climbed back out of the sewer, and this man with a giant smile and a giant nose is standing out front. How come Carnegie Hall is not, like, police lined off or anything? Like, the cop car is still there. How do you know that? She just walked out. Christmas Eve of all nights. Reporter down. Clearly an inspiration for Mass Effect later on. Was it the first Mass Effect or Mass Effect 2? Or was it just all of them where you could punch the same reporter? I think it was all of them. fellow officer Daniel here, who I guess also does not have regulation attire, so I guess he must be a detective. Oh, I guess he did survive. Sorry everybody else on your date died. Almost like she was meant to be there. My boy understands that I won't be there for him at any time in his life. Anyway, to change the subject from being something awkward and family-related, mitochondria. Mitochondria. I feel like I've heard that word before in a textbook. How fast exactly do you think Daniel is driving for the everything else to look like a blur like this? Also, I never noticed it before, but I guess the cop car is just a sprite, because you can see, like, around the siren that it's actually, like, kind of embossed against the background. We don't really mention it here, but she probably smells pretty awful right now after walking around in a dress, like, knee-deep in sewage. It all started with this incident. 6 days that were to become a nightmare for all. Like this flickering water. For some reason, when I was a kid, I found it really cool that this game was, you know, it wasn't based on a movie or anything, but was still set in a realistic, well, you know, semi-realistic depiction of Manhattan. Don't ask me what's going on here. I cannot explain what is happening to the city with that polygon. Probably some downsides to the vertex fixing. And we're actually going to end here for episode 2, so that these can fit within the day that they're supposed to come out. And maybe tomorrow, we'll continue with the next day. Like I said, I don't think we're going to do one-to-one days here every day, but it's a nice way to start, I think. Anyhow, I've been Shadefyre, this is Parasite Eve, and I hope you'll join me next time as we find out a little bit more about Eve. Here's a little teaser for tomorrow. Alright, take care, folks.